And I think it's partly because I don't think I've actually put this into words before. Do you want to work out with your partner? Do you think you could never work out with your partner? Or maybe you already do it and you keep falling out and you want to not fall out. You want to do it in a way that is actually enjoyable and productive for both of you. Whatever your situation, this video is for you. This is the third in the series of Chats with Ben. And in this episode, all about how to train with your partner without falling out, we cover experiences and learnings from our 12 plus years of training, doing sport, working out together. So we're going to cover firstly the benefits of doing it, and then after that some really practical frameworks, methodologies, lessons that we've learned, all of which we wish we had learned sooner. Really hope you enjoy this episode, and here it is.
So when people say to me, oh my God, I could never work with my partner, how on earth do you work with your partner? I'm like, honestly, compared with like training with your partner and actually coaching your partner, working together is a piece of cake. And I think our relationship is a bit more extreme in the gym because you obviously compete at a very high level and I'm coaching you, and often some of the training you're doing requires me to be there. If you're benching heavy, someone with my kind of skills and expertise needs to be there
to save me,
to save your life. And there's obviously a lot of trust involved, but there's also a bit of a high pressure environment going on. And, you know, that can be really challenging at times. But I guess if we rewind to start off with, how did we even start just training together? I had always basically trained, even before we were together. I started weight training when I was 16, and that was just to get strong for rugby and wanted to look better, feel healthier, even, you know, having that awareness as a teenager still. And I think quite a lot of guys, I think, get into weight training as teenagers. But you actually were more of a runner when we first got together, and it was only later that you actually started weight training.
Yep. Yeah. I think in my early years, I used to do a ton of sport. And then at some point in my teenage years, I just rebelled and used to skive PE and not really bother with sport. And then discovered running probably around university. I remember for my 21st birthday, my dad bought me a sports watch. I didn't have a say in what I wanted for my birthday. He was just like, no, you've been running, therefore you are a runner, therefore you will have this running watch. And maybe that's where that obsession started. But I got pretty frustrated with running pretty quickly because I kept doing 10Ks and I kept getting the same time. It was like I did races and I always kept getting the same time no matter what I did. And those 10K races were in and amongst half marathons and also 5Ks. But actually, I'm just thinking I didn't actually really have a coach then. Like I didn't really train with anyone then. It was more like I went to a running club or I was part of a running team, and therefore you have your plan laid out for you. And when you go to the sessions, you're coached, and when you're not, you don't really think about it. So it wasn't like there was really, like our training didn't collide at any point really then. You'd come to races to support me, but it wasn't like, oh, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And then there was the moment I picked up Paula Radcliffe's book, How to Run, and she said, it will help your running if you do weight training. And I was really looking for something to help my running at that point. And that's when, if you remember, we were living in Birmingham. We were members of different gyms. You were a member of a gym that had weights, equipment. It was like a 15-minute walk away from where we lived. I was a member of a gym that was 5 minutes away from where we lived, but it had a swimming pool and it had a sauna and it had a steam room and it had fancy changing rooms. And so our priorities were very, very different. And that was a point where I just said, I think I need you to teach me how to squat. And you were like, oh my God, I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I was trying to think, what was I thinking when you were doing all this running? And I thought, oh yeah, running's cool. I hated running, even though I played a lot of rugby and like running is involved, but it was always a burden. It was running to get from one place to another was the gist of my running. So I would never have just gone for a run. So I guess I just thought you were a completely different like species because you liked running.
I think I thought you were a completely different species. When you told me you went to the gym to do legs, I had no idea what you were doing there. Yeah. Like not a clue.
Well, back then as well, I was totally just bro splitting. It wasn't for any real athletic performance. It was just trying to look jacked and look like the guys on the cover of Men's Health. And I think it was actually, looking back, what were my influences to start weight training other than being strong? I know that my dad occasionally would get Men's Health, and I would see these men on the front of Men's Health who'd obviously got these great 6-packs, 8-packs. And I'm like, whoa, that would be cool to have one of those. And so that was probably why I would go to the gym, do bro splits that I just found on the internet. And I just thought that was the way to train. But even back then, when I was doing it, it wasn't like a girl thing to do. So I don't think I'd even thought at that point, oh, Jodie might enjoy doing this. But it was only when you started doing the really light weights in Paula Radcliffe's book that I was like, oh yeah, I can see why this would be useful. And then I guess when you were like, right, I want you to teach me how to squat, I think I knew a bit about training to like perform, like squat heavy. I'd done my personal training diploma straight out after university, but that's not a really like high level strength and conditioning type thing. So I don't think I was super well equipped to teach you how to lift. And that's why when we started training, I could give you the basics, but it wasn't really until we both moved to a more serious like strength training gym that I got way more into the actual strength and performance side of it, not just trying to look like a bodybuilder. And I learned more and more about that. I could pass that on to you. And it turned out you were potentially really strong. And your ceiling as a lifter, although we wouldn't have necessarily called it powerlifting back then, was obviously a lot higher than it would have been as a runner. And I also imagine that, as you said, your 10K times were just plateaued, right? You just keep hitting the same 10K time over and over again. But with strength training, you start lifting and your numbers blow up so fast. You look different very, very quickly. And that probably got you sufficiently into it that it was going to become a long-term thing.
Maybe it was chasing the dopamine, because seeing 46 minutes at the top of the finish line again and again and again and being like, what is going on? No matter what I do, I can't change this. And then moving to squatting and then putting 40 kilos in the bar and then 50 and then 60. And then at some point you're adding 2.5 kilos every single week and you're like, oh my God, I could be at 300 kilos. Like there's no sense that at some point it's going to slow down and you are going to plateau there as well. You just keep going blindly into the future.
That good old linear progression that's going to last forever.
Newbie gains. Oh my goodness, I want those back. But I wonder if it's because you didn't totally know what you were doing. Like you did and you didn't. Maybe that actually helped, because I think one of my biggest things around asking you for help to teach me how to squat was I didn't want I didn't want to create that kind of hierarchy in our relationship. I didn't want it to be like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and Ben's going to tell me what to do. And when we were at separate ones, I could just go and lift my Paula Radcliffe 5 kg weights and stretch and kind of go on the cross trainer for a bit and pretend like I'd had a workout. But now it was like, okay, you have to get serious. But I definitely wouldn't have wanted for it to be like, oh yeah, now Ben's your coach. But then I do think that part of the gains probably came because there were no other women really in the weights room. And therefore it meant you were my reference point. So if you were lifting a weight, I thought, hey, Ben's lifting that. I can lift that too. Not really thinking because you're bigger than me, it would mean that I wouldn't be able to. And then, but that wasn't a competition thing. I don't ever feel like I was competing with you. It was more like, oh, this is possible, and therefore the limit does not exist.
Yeah, but I think that's such a useful state of mind, though, to have. There's oh, I'm going to get stronger. I've seen evidence of me getting stronger. There are other guys that can do this. There's no reason why I can't lift as heavy. Whereas I think I've definitely seen it before working with people. Their initial reaction to seeing anyone lift something reasonably heavy is, oh, I could never do that. And so you don't want that attitude. Having a positive, oh, I can lift anything, is far better to have. So ideally you come at it with that attitude. But I think something that, yes, I think the idea that you had no precedent was really important at the time. And I think that might be harder now because everyone's on the internet and Instagram and you're seeing all these people lifting huge weights. And so in some ways it's good because you're like, oh, it's possible. So you can see other people doing it. But there's also that comparison element that can be really hard to think, wow, this person's been doing that for 5 years. They look great. They do this. This is how regimented their daily routine is. I could never do that, knowing what goes into it. But back then it wasn't like that.
And this was like 12 years ago.
Yeah. So the information on the internet would have been available if you'd have sought it out. But you don't really have a choice about that now, because you go on Instagram and YouTube, and depending on what, you know, your friendship group does and what you're interested in, you're probably going to be shown it regardless of whether you want it or not.
So I feel like where we are now is that we often train together, probably one session a day, the other one we might not do together. And then but we still do different things, like we do different sports, like I do powerlifting, you do CrossFit, and then we kind of run together occasionally as well. And then you coach me in powerlifting, so you do my program, you handle me at competitions, and then you're around for whatever I need in sessions. But then your training, I'm like a hype girl, but I don't give you like technical feedback occasionally, but not really. And then when you compete, I'm your hype girl, and I do the kind of non-technical coaching help, like writing down the times and stuff like that for the CrossFit Open, for example.
I might tell you some cues to tell me when I'm like completely exhausted out of my mind. You know, you forget to lift, basically. Yeah,
like the CrossFit Open where we wrote down the piece of paper and you were like, right, here, you're going to need to tell me to breathe. And I was like, right, breathe. And one of the other coaches was like, can I get that cue as well? Like they thought that they wanted someone to tell them how to breathe, because it is quite useful sometimes. Yep. But yeah, so I would say that right now we're in quite a productive place with it where it works, and we don't fall out in the gym too much. But I feel like there's like a few different challenges that we've overcome to get to that point, which might be useful to just cover, because this, like, some of them I wouldn't even have predicted that these happen. So we could take in turns.
Okay.
So one that I have in mind is that when, like, I don't think you can even imagine what it feels like to be like fully tested at your physical peak before you've done it. So like extreme cardio where you're just so knackered, or weight training where you're like, I can't hit this weight and I don't know why, or where like your technique's breaking down, or something's happened where you just like, your lizard brain's taking over because you're just stressed out. And I think one thing that was interesting that we found was that our ways of dealing with that were very different. And like if you have that situation where something's not going right, you'll get kind of angry at yourself, but I'll get like emotional. And I don't know where that comes from at all, but I've noticed it's mainly women. I've noticed like some girls in the gym sometimes, like you'll see them crying and I'm like, why are you crying? And they're like, it's just not going right. And then you're like, but it's not emotional, it's okay. But I've only learned that it's not emotional from going through it, and from you being like, it's not emotional, stop crying, it's just squatting. And then like it's just something that kind of happens when you realize that you'll have a different way of dealing with exercise and training than your partner, probably.
Yeah, and just a note on that, like it's just emotion in a different way, isn't it? Because when I'm getting really annoyed at myself, and this is probably my worst self just during my existence, if I'm trying to do something technical that I believe myself I can do it, or I've done it before and I'm struggling to get it, I will get really frustrated, and I almost can't like leave the gym until I've done it. And so it's like, you know, several hours later and there's still me trying to do the same thing that I was struggling with. And I can get really, really frustrated, and I have quite a lot of negative self-talk, but I utilize that negative self-talk. Like I use that as fuel. It doesn't get me down, it gets me fired up and motivated to do it. But I'm sure I'm a horrible person to be around, and especially for you. And I think that comes on to the next challenge, is that you don't necessarily treat your other half as nicely as you would someone else. And the main thing that I can think is that when you're coaching someone or trying to help someone, even if it's just really basic stuff, but it also applies if it's at the other end of the spectrum and you're trying to do something really technically difficult, but for an experienced athlete, is there are going to be times when you are telling someone to do something and they just can't quite get it. And that's when you really need to be compassionate. And if it wasn't your spouse, you probably would have that empathy and that patience, and you'd be like, okay, this person isn't understanding that, you'd even look inwardly. You'd be thinking, what am I saying that isn't right? Am I saying something wrong? Can I say this in a different way? But when it's your partner, you just don't have that length of kind of patience. You're just kind of like, come on, just do it. Like, I've just told you how to do it. Come on, do that. And if they can't do it, you get that frustration. And I think that's where trying to zoom out and almost look as a kind of third party viewer of the situation, you need to just check yourself that you're not getting like overly frustrated, because also, your athlete's getting frustrated. They want to be able to do it. They want to be able to lift really well. You're trying as hard as you can. And so you're frustrated, and then I get frustrated. And it's key then that like I remember to focus on like what's real and the cueing and how can I do better before I just kind of get really frustrated. Because it only takes me to say something in a slightly short way or in an offhand way. Oh, come on, just do that. And you're already in a state of like, this is getting frustrating now. Like, you said that before and I couldn't do it. So it's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of creates that trigger grid that we mentioned in the previous video, that you then might snap a little bit. And I'm like, whoa, hang on, I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to coach you. Come on. And then you're like, oh no, you're not coaching me. You wouldn't coach anyone else like that. So it's really bringing that awareness and trying to de-escalate things before you actually go into full coach mode that I think helps me avoid saying things that I shouldn't say, that makes things not happy in the gym.
Yep. Yeah, that's a real thing. Well, this is linked to the thing I was going to say next, which is like, if we didn't have a framework between us, or if we didn't talk this through, I think our egos would get in the way, and mine could especially. And I think it's partly because I don't think I've actually put this into words before, but I'm a strong, independent woman and I don't need no man.
Yes, I've heard that before.
You've heard this before. But linked to training, it's almost like I don't want to. If you think like lots of what we talk about in kind of relationship strengths and relationship improvements is like, how do you want to feel? And if I always want to feel confident, competent, and calm, and then we're going to the gym and there's a training session where I know I should be able to do it, I know I should be able to lift the weights, I know how to freaking squat, bench, and deadlift, and there's something going wrong or not grooving, and it almost leads you to feel like you have to kind of tell me the real basics, then there's something in my head going, no, like stop that. I kind of don't like the dependency.
Yes.
And if coaching is all about self-sufficiency, if education is always about self-sufficiency, and in my head, I'm like, even though I know that athletes of the highest caliber ever still have coaches because they still want to improve, there's something in my head that's going, I should be able to like progress past this. I should be able to like coach myself at some point, and that's better. But it almost involves having that balance between, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to be like Ronaldo, like I'm in charge, I'm intentional about my session, and Ben's going to help me, but he's not trying to like overpower me, and being able to accept the help. I feel like it's finding that balance to then keep your confidence, because for me, I feel like the moment I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, I then start being like a lesser version of me, and I start being this kind of less strong version, and creating this like weird dependency where I'm like, oh my God, stop that right now. So it's all like ahead. I mean, it's all the mental game really, but I feel like if we hadn't talked that through, we probably just wouldn't understand each other.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm smiling because there's a little dog. Can you hear the dog outside absolutely losing it? I don't know if that's going to come through, but
sorry about the dog. It's not our dog.
But yeah, I think that there's a risk with the ego thing, that whoever in the relationship is the coach and whoever is the athlete, even though it may not be coach athlete, it's still going. It's almost, you could almost abuse that power.
Yeah.
You could very much, you could be having a bad day and you'd be like, right, this is the time I can, for want of a better word, like bully someone. You can be like, that wasn't good enough, do it again. And you're actually projecting your own shortcomings, your own feeling bad during the day for whatever reason. And you're kind of belittling that person. You're making sure they know you're the master, you understand what's going on. Even if relatively speaking, like you're not brilliant at coaching and brilliant at the sport, I think this is where there could be an ego imbalance that comes out in a really negative way, and it's another one that is solved with some self-awareness, but also as the person who is the coachee, being aware that the coach isn't having a great day.
And even if it's not coach and coachee, I feel like one of the things that when I've talked to girlfriends about this, they've been like, I wouldn't want to go train with my boyfriend because they'll tell me what to do.
Yep.
And that probably, this might be stereotypical, but maybe this happens more because lots of men have just been used to training weights for a longer time because it's been more like prominent or socially acceptable for men to train weights for a long time, because women always thought that they were going to get too jacked or, whatever if they lifted too much. And so therefore it's like, is that just a fear that people have, that they're going to get like overpowered and therefore they're going to have a low energy situation where they feel like they don't want to be told off by their partner or told what to do? There's
potentially lots of other little bits in there, because it could be easily that you don't necessarily trust your partner to coach you very well. Or what if your partner's only been weight training 6 months and they've still got a 6-month head start on you, but they've only been training on their own? They could have picked up loads of bad information or bad form from training. I've been in gyms where I've heard the boy coaching the girl, and it's not always going to be that way around, but giving some horrendous advice on a squat. And a squat, it's really easy until it's not easy, and then it's very hard very quickly. And when you're then, it's at that point, this is sports science at its highest. It's when it gets hard that form starts to break down, and that's when you start correcting form. And it's really hard to correct form when someone is at 90% of what they're capable of. And this is what I will see. There's a couple of examples that come to mind. One was in Playa del Carmen in Mexico, and I remember this guy giving the most horrendous cues to a girl. They were almost like the opposite of the cues that I would have been giving. And he was wondering why she kept like dumping the bar forward on a front squat. And I was so close to being like, I'm really sorry, but you're going to get injured here. Like, he's basically telling you the opposite of what you need to know. He was getting her to go into really hyper extension in the low back, getting her to go on her heels. And so when she was going down, she was just not able to maintain that hyper extension, not to get into squat depth, couldn't maintain balance on her heels. So she was just dumping it forward. And he happened to be German, and he was shouting at her in German to do these things. And I was like, 999. And it was just clearly not going to work. The biomechanics did not make sense. And I didn't do anything about it, because who's to know this, random guy coming over. I don't look like I train any more than he looks like he trains. So it's difficult to interject. But when you have that relationship, does she think she's the one making the error? Or does she think, hang on, he might not know what he's talking about? And if she doesn't have any context, it's really hard to challenge that. And I think if you've got any kind of doubts about your partner's kind of ability in that, or how good they are as a partner under pressure, you just might not want that contention. She might never go back and squat in the gym again after that session, because she's like, I don't like failing squats in front of everyone. I don't like my boyfriend shouting at me in public, and I don't like falling out with him, so I'm not going to do it anymore. So there's definitely a few things that would make you apprehensive about doing the whole thing.
And I wonder if the foundation of it just needs to be your relationship. It's almost like you need to get your relationship good before you start training together. Because if you put training together on a bad relationship, like imagine if you were competing against each other as well. If you had this underlying sense of, oh, we're in competition, or maybe if one of the members of the two was like insecure, and therefore, like, imagine if you were like, we probably can think of like couples who this might happen with, but where the guy's like actually doesn't want to get the woman to get in really good shape and become confident, and then potentially realize that she's with an absolute idiot and leave. So there might be all these different ways that a guy or any side of the partnership is keeping them small or kind of putting them down because they're not confident in themselves. That's quite deep.
Yeah.
But that could happen.
I think when you become aware that some of these things might play a role, then like is a guy going to want to take a girl into a gym environment where there are like 50 guys in better shape than he is? Like, that could be a thing. Like, oh, you don't need to train today, baby. Join a different gym. Like, I don't know. It's difficult to speak to that. But if you become aware that that might be an issue on either side, then it's an interesting one. I've got another small tangent. It's a practical one, really. But I think a challenge might be when you're trying to balance helping your partner versus doing your own training in a session. And we definitely experience that, because CrossFit training, it's not like in powerlifting where you do a set and then you rest for like 4 to 8 minutes, have a nap, have a cup of tea, and then do your next set, and you've got time to chat, you've got time to coach other people, do some mobility.
Powerlifting's so fun.
With CrossFit, I might have a workout that's 20 minutes long and I'm not stopping during that 20 minutes. And parts of that 20 minutes might be really uncomfortable, where I'm breathing really heavily, and it's not going to be possible for me to shout over the gym, like, Jodie, you're doing it wrong. Do this instead.
No. And that's the thing that we had to make a rule about as well.
Yeah, because I used to do it. I used to do it.
Because you used to do it. And then I'd go over and be like, so, I don't like that because I don't want everyone else to know this. It doesn't matter. It's no one else's business. Yeah, so it's a really good point, because you kind of have to realize what you will and won't stand for straight away, and then figure out a way of saying it to the other person in a very nice way that means that they're not like, well, hang on, I was only trying to help you, and they don't get defensive. Because it would happen again if either of us are in a high stakes thing and the other person says something and it's like, give me a second. And it's so easy to take that personally, and then it's actually not personal. It's just heightened state of emotion or fatigue.
Yeah. I would only do that now if it was like you were doing something like you would injure you, or there was a dog under the barbell you were about to drop, which has kind of happened before.
Yeah.
But what I might do is I might be like, hopefully that dog. I would say, look, I've got a workout now. I'm doing it. It might be 4 minutes of work, 2 minutes of rest, 4 minutes of work, 2 minutes of rest, for example. And I might be saying, so in this minute's time, I'll be free if you need to ask me anything or whatever. But I'm managing those expectations. But I think the way it can come up in a less kind of competitive, right, I've actually got to do this scenario, is you could be working with your partner and being like, oh, here's how to do this squat, here's how to do this squat, whatever. But you then realize you have spent half an hour in the gym and you've not done anything. And so ultimately it could be that the first few times you go to the gym together, it doesn't work practically from actually getting work done. So I think it requires a little bit of planning. So even now, I will plan our workouts so that if there's an exercise that it would be useful for you to have some coaching on, I will program something that I'm doing where there are really sufficient breaks, or I don't have timed rest. I can just work with you. So we both kind of have the technical stuff at the same time. And when you're then doing stuff that you're totally capable of just doing, the accessory work in general, I will then put my workouts where I'm not going to be a very useful individual as far as you're concerned. So a little bit of planning and a kind of expectation of, right, at this point in time, equipped bench press is a perfect example, because if Jodie's wearing the bench shirt, far less strong, independent woman at that point in time, because she's wearing the shirt, and every single bench press set she does requires me to be there. But I'm kind of looking at that and thinking, look, there's 40 minutes of this session where I'm really not there for my benefit. I'm having to be there as a coach. But having that expectation beforehand stops you getting to a point where it's like, oh, hang on, can you just get on with this yourself? I need to go and do this. Or being like, oh, God, I've been here for half an hour and I haven't done any work. I think having an expectation that there's that really, really helps. And if you can plan ahead and program time for actually helping your other person, that helps again with any frustration building up. Or you might just need to spend longer at the gym during this period and trust that over time, the person who is the coachee is going to get more competent and more independent with the lifting.
Do you want to let's cover the benefits of this, because I think that we've talked about the challenges, but there are obviously benefits. And then I reckon between us, we've got a ton of practical things that we do or we've thought through that would just be useful. It's almost like, it's kind of the stuff I wish I'd known at the start, because we could have got through some of those learning curves faster. But I feel like the main benefit is the positive flywheel that we find ourselves in because we both train, and And because we both train together, it means that positive thing that we both do, we get to do together. And I think the positive flywheel is partly because of the coach-athlete relationship, but it's partly just because you get to experience exercise together. And I think that's one person gets fitter, stronger, happier, healthier. They treat the other person nicer. They are a happier person to be around. They look better. They feel better. And then the other person kind of wants to raise their game at the same time. And then as the other person raises their game, the other person does too. And then you're in this like really cool, and especially with coaching, it's like, as you get better at like doing my program, I get better at following it, and then I lift better, and then I do better at competitions, and you're like, oh my God, she's really good. She needs a level up coach, and then you get better, and it's like this whole thing where you're just like self-development and improvement is just the norm. Whereas the opposite of that, you would just be down this horrible spiral where you would be kind of egging each other on to not be healthy. But we very much have the positive flywheel, which I feel like is the main one.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. And I think secondary to that, it would be the ability just to spend more time with each other. And it's quality time. And I think this is two things. There's in the gym, and it's really nice to be able to learn from each other and support each other, spot each other. It's like, oh, I actually have like a kind of physical dependency on this person.
I feel like an idiot when I'm spotting you though. If you're doing a squat and I'm like...
I wouldn't have asked you for a spot on a squat for a long time.
No, like,
maybe as a side,
okay, it's gonna be fine. Yeah.
maybe as a side spot. But I think having that kind of little interdependency, having that encouragement from someone else is a bonding experience for sure. Like that's what most people don't go and train on their own. They train in classes, they train with a training buddy. And for that training buddy to be your partner could really strengthen your relationship, especially if you're not working together, right? So you don't have loads of quality time. So I think there's the in the gym factor. But I also think that just the little frictional time, the walk to the gym and walk from the gym, and invariably we don't have long commutes to the gym. But if you've got a 15 or 20 minute drive to the gym, heaven forbid, you can spend that time together. And we often will talk not just about training, but work stuff, just decompress, like talk stuff out that we would have to find other time. So you can use that frictional time either side of the gym just to talk to each other. And I think that's a really nice part of actually doing the whole gym ritual together.
Can you think of any other benefits?
Other benefits? Can you?
Probably, but not like specific ones with stories.
So I think those are the two big benefits.
I guess eventually, like if we wanted to do stuff together as in, well, I think it's nice like both just being like fit, because other stuff that we might want to do, say like we're in Lisbon at the moment and there's like a ton of hills, and if we didn't both train and one of us was just like way fitter than the other one, then it might affect your normal day to day, because one person's really good at just going up hills and walking around and the other's just not as good at it. Yeah,
I think linked to that though is it creates a bit more of a shared interest, because if we're like, oh yeah, let's go for a run, we know that we both want to run or could be capable. If a friend of ours says, hey, do you want to go on a hike, which has happened to us before, we're both going to be able to go on a hike together. So it kind of drives the interest together. I guess that shared interest sparks other conversations together. We've got so much more shared kind of references now. If we're going out for a meal, for example, we might naturally start talking about training. If someone else is into training, there's way more shared references, especially if you're in the same gym together. The people that you meet are shared, so we create mutual gym friends because we're both meeting them in the gym. So it's not like separate worlds. So I think
accountability potentially as well. Though we've talked about this before, because neither of us really think that we're people who need accountability.
Yep.
But maybe we take a lot of that for granted because we train together. Don't know. But then it's like right now, if we've got in a week like 5 of our sessions and we're going to go at the same time, then you've got that. It's just there. It's non-negotiable. It's in the diary. And even if you would say that would be my non-negotiable anyway, it can't hurt.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for some people that accountability probably is more useful than others. And sometimes doing the hard thing, like we went for a run the other day. It was really cold. And like if it was just me, I might have been like, do you know what? I don't know. I could probably rationalize why going for a walk but wrapped up warm would have been better, or to have waited until the gym opened and went to the gym because it was a bit warmer. I could have rationalized all those things. But when I know that you want to go for a run, you can kind of like talk it out. You're like, look, it's going to suck for the first 5 minutes and then it's going to be fine. And it's like doing the hard things together is often easier. than doing it alone.
And then in the end, we were going to go for 10K. No, 12. And then you were like, should we just do 15? And I was like, well, we might as well do a half marathon now. And then we realized that wasn't a good idea. So
A half marathon would have been
too far.
On that day.
Stop there. Tapped out. So I think that the one thing we haven't mentioned is just the time, as in if you've got wildly different sports or things that you do, you might have a whole different week structure. And then you kind of got the thing again that we talked about in the how to work with your partner video, where it's like whose one wins out. If someone's got a competition at the same time as someone else has got a competition, which one do you go to? Do you go separate? Like who wins? And it might end up being who was better or just who argued more. Don't know.
For sure. Well, I think this plays out with us specifically when we are looking for a gym to train at. Because a few years ago, when we were traveling, we would look for a gym that was basically very powerlifter friendly. Because Jodie was the one that was competing internationally. I wasn't doing CrossFit seriously, or I was doing strength training, but not particularly well. And so we'd be looking for gyms with center knurling on the barbells and squat racks with safeties, and the bench would have to have an adjustable bench height, because otherwise it's very difficult to bench at an elite level if the rack height means you can't reach it, or you have to be there to unrack the bench. And I guess ultimately as I became more proficient at CrossFit, more serious about CrossFit, and started competing in the CrossFit Open, it was actually, training CrossFit in a powerlifting gym is really hard.
It's really funny when people are squatting and benching and deadlifting, and you're like functionally handstand walking around the place.
So functional.
And people are like, what the hell is this powerlifter doing?
Yeah.
They're lost.
Or you're doing kipping pull-ups and everyone is like, oh my God, who let the dickhead in? Like, you're like, knowingly, I know they're bad. I know the form is bad, but it's just the sport,
You always need
right?
to be like, I know.
Yeah. So...
But powerlifting in a CrossFit gym, I don't care about powerlifting in a CrossFit gym, because it's just a reminder for me to not be a princess and not have to have the perfect bar and the perfect, I don't squat with safeties anymore, but that was as a rule to just be more adaptable. But then maybe that's the compromise that we have to make because of training together.
That's what I think it comes down to. I think at some point you might need to decide who wins out, not because you're a more important athlete or I am a more important athlete, but in the end it's so much easier for you to train powerlifting in a CrossFit gym than the other way around. It made more sense to go to a CrossFit gym. Plus it's way easier to find a good CrossFit gym than it is to find a powerlifting gym. So I think there will be some compromises, and if one partner's really into yoga and another partner is into a strength sport, strongman or something, those two things probably won't be at the same gym. Like a yoga studio is not going to be where the strength gym is. So those compromises may need to be made. So I don't necessarily know that we have a framework for that, because luckily we can train at the same gym.
So I guess the practical sides of it, there are probably quite a few. And I think one of them we kind of mentioned in how far away the gym is from where you are. But from a practical point of view, and this is, a lot of the points I'll make, I think, are grounded in independence, because I honestly think that so many girls will not want to train with their partner because they don't want to lose their independence, because they don't want it to be like, he's the boss of me, he's telling me what to do, I can't get respite from that if I want to. And one of the things that I think is really good that we do is because we're nomadic and we always live in Airbnbs and hotels, we make sure that the gym is very close to where we're staying. And I really like having the ability to arrive and leave at different times, which is so simple. But the last thing you want to do is be standing by the door, you ready? And have you, and oh no, I just need to do this first. I just need to do this. It's I'm just going to go and I'll see you there. And it's not it's fine. It doesn't matter. The walk's short enough. It doesn't really matter. And then the idea that if someone wants to stay longer, then they can, and you can just go, you can kind of come and go as you please. So you're not just always relying on each other to do the stuff at the same time. I feel like that's really important. And we haven't always had that, because we had longer walks before. But
it's also worth mentioning the walk needs to be short enough, but also safe enough.
Yeah.
Because we've also stayed in parts of the world where it doesn't really matter how short the walk is. It's probably dangerous, too dangerous to do on your own.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a difference. But yes, the independence thing, the freedom thing is huge.
I think another one is before you start doing it, or before we started doing it, we definitely didn't have this conversation because we've only kind of introduced this question recently. But the idea of how do you want to feel as being a real thing to define first is really good, because I think that right, like we both know how we want to feel in a gym situation, and so much of that is about being nice to each other and cheerleading each other and not kind of putting the other one down. But I feel like if we didn't have that, it would actually be quite like stressful training. And I know, like, we talk about rowing a little bit because I've like just started to play with the rower, and I know my rowing technique is like not perfect, but sometimes I'm like, I just don't care that it's not. Sometimes I'm like, right now I want Ben's help, or I want some coaching cues, or I'll watch a YouTube video, or I'll say to him, can you send me a YouTube video? But otherwise it's like, I'd rather just be left to it, and then I'll ask for feedback when I want it. So maybe it's deciding yourself how you want to feel, and then letting the other person know, but then owning it as well, so that when you know that you want help, you're not kind of there being really quiet thinking like, oh, I don't know if they're going to say anything right now. It's more like you're like, no, I do need this help, and so here's how I want to receive it, which involves being intentional and independent at the same time, and
explaining those boundaries, like being clear that I don't want help right now.
Yeah.
Like because otherwise how will you know? Like, yeah. I can tell when you're just dialed in and you want to get on with it, when otherwise I might be like, oh, this, that, and for anyone, I think, that has trained, when you're trying to get on with it, you're not in the mood to talk to someone, and someone comes over to you in the gym and tries to offer you like help or guidance unsolicited, like it's super annoying. And that's going to be the same with your partner, I guess, as well. And
if I was just like rowing or doing anything, and I had in my kind of head, I don't want Ben to interrupt me right now, I don't want his help right now, I just want to kind of feel the stuff, I want to like feel it, and I didn't say anything, then of course you would probably just try and help. And then if I then got annoyed at you for doing that, it's like, that's on me because I haven't made that clear. And then it's almost like not letting it, it's like not snapping as well. If you tried to help me and I hadn't communicated with you that I didn't want the help right then I'd have to be like, oh, this is cool, thank you, appreciate this.
But now please go away.
Thank you, kind sir. But now I'm like, I'm cool, I've got this. Yeah. I'm going to try and be the strong, independent woman, and I'm going to just like ask you for help when I need it.
So because you mentioned it, I think a really powerful tool in all this is YouTube. Because if you're trying to help someone do something, I think using YouTube to first educate yourself if you're not sure about the way something should be done is very useful. It's also something that you could send to your partner before a training session, because you can be like, hey, this is what I think we should try, because then they will have seen what you're meant to be trying to learn in the gym. They'll have seen some demonstrations, because sometimes when you're in the gym, you don't want to be doing demonstrations of the thing that you're trying to coach. You might be terrible at the demonstration. You won't even know because you're demonstrating. So managing the expectations of that person by showing them a video is good. And also, they then hear the same truth from two different sources. And I know that, especially when it's your partner says something and I guess you interpret it differently, and it's only when someone else says it, they're like, oh, that's how it works. And I know that I've been saying, it could be any lift, but I can be like, look, this is a really important cue. This is an important cue. I send you an Alan Thrall video with exactly the same cues, and Jodie will be like, oh wow, Alan said I should do this. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And it's literally verbatim the same thing that I've been saying, but it's literally the tone of voice, because she hears my tone of voice the whole day, every day. Someone else's voice is just presenting that information slightly differently, and it will go in.
It happened the other day with a good friend of both of ours. She's called Sophia. She's got a world record deadlift, exceptional deadlifter. And I heard her coaching someone in the deadlift, and she's giving them cues, and she's like, back tight. And I was deadlifting, and I was like, back tight. And then it made my session go really well. And then I said it to Ben, and he's like, because obviously he said back tight so many times, but it's just going to go in different ways.
Yeah. So I think this is another way of, like, if you're trying to coach someone and it's not going in, find a couple of videos, send it, see what resonates. Because also it's just different cues. Literally, you can be using a cue and it makes no sense to someone. You give them a completely different cue that wouldn't work for you, might not work for someone else, and they're like, oh, now I get it. And cueing is so much in coaching. And so YouTube is your friend. I watch YouTube a huge amount for my own training, my own development, but also for my coaching, but also with you to say, look, here's someone else explaining it.
Are you a YouTube on commission influencer?
No, I'm not, but I should be.
You should be.
YouTube is the one.
So there's a point on this, given that anyone watching, they might not have a coach-coachee relationship. They actually might be both coached by separate people. I feel like an important point that we've potentially hit before is not undermining your partner's coach. So if I said, I want to get really good at this one thing, this one lift, and I'm going to get a third person to help me with this. I'm going to get like a primary coach for deadlift, for example. I think that it would be so easy for not just you because you are my coach, but you as in someone who's just spent a lot of time with me in the gym, to kind of look at that new program and be like, oh, well, they don't know that you're not very good at this. They don't know that you don't like this. They don't know this. They don't know that. I know all this stuff, and almost like undermine it and kind of cost that person their success. So I feel like if one of the kind of athletes, if we call both people athletes, if the one athlete has said, I'm going to get help from this person, the other one almost needs to just like shut up, basically.
Yeah, and this comes down to ego, right? Because you could come home from a session and think, oh, they said do this. And I was like, look, we've tried that. We tried that a year ago and it didn't work. And then not only are you basically saying that's not going to work, which is going to harm them, do they lose trust in the coach? It shows that you're probably getting defensive about your own coaching ability. I think if you are the coach or just the partner of an athlete, you really have to let go of ego and be open-minded. And it just doesn't matter. It doesn't say anything about your coaching that someone's using a different coach and they might get better results. Like, you've got to champion that relationship and hope it works.
It's the same team.
It comes down to same team for sure.
And something also kind of on that is, I think I'm trying to think of the couples that we have seen training in the gym together, and when I can just look at them and be like, this is going to break down, like this is not going to work. And because we know that an indicator of a successful and happy relationship is your resting heart rate when you're around each other, the idea is that you're not putting each other on edge all the time. Like, I feel like it's a really important thing that we like don't do that with each other. But the ones I've heard where they do it badly, I think, is one of the people in the relationship will be almost like treating the other person like a past version of them. They'll almost be seeing they're trying to do something and being like, oh, you always do this, or you always do that thing, and oh, can't you just stop this, or oh, that's that thing coming up from that old injury you had. And I feel very strongly that if you had a new person taking you from like day one, they would just look at you and they would judge you and assess you and coach you on the present you, and your past wouldn't come into it. And because it's not actually always that useful to be reliving stories from your past that keep you lifting in the same way or hitting the same numbers, or like, oh, do you remember when you lifted that weight? Like, let's try and get back to that. It's more like, take that person as the person they are right in front of you and treat them as if like there is no limit to what they can achieve, because they will probably carry on with that. They'll probably appreciate that, and that will probably help them improve way better than reminding them of some like past version of them.
Yeah, and the language that you use is so crucial. Like, if you find yourself, or I find myself saying, oh, you'll never, or you always, or you can't, if you're using absolutes, it's probably not a helpful thing to say. So it's always, I agree, kind of take the present moment, but just check yourself before you say something that actually on paper is like a ridiculous thing to say. It just takes a second. You just need a second before you say something that could be a bit inflammatory. Just hold your tongue for a second. Like, is this helpful? Like, is this going to make things better?
But I wonder if this is also a difference between how we train and how we're motivated. Because I think I just live in like cloud cookie land when I train, and I just think everything up to this point has been really good, and now I'm only going to get better, and there's no reason why I wouldn't. And so sometimes, even if you remind me that I failed a lift last week, I'd be like, what? No, I didn't. Because in my head, it's like gone out of my head, because I think it's ultimately because I don't actually find it useful to think, oh, there's this thing I did wrong. I more think, it's a new day. I can take everything. I can back myself to succeed at this and I can do it. But I think that it probably does help you proceeding and progressing if you think, oh, I didn't do this right last week, but now I need to do this to improve. And that's just our different personality types, because if one of us is very fueled by the kind of the anger, the competition, the whole like, no, I can do it, I can prove this. Whereas one of us is fueled by like, everything's amazing and now it can only get even better, then we're not going to appreciate the other's way of kind of helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And very linked to that, but it's a separate point. I think it's important to match the person's energy, because, and I have like first-hand experience of working with lots of different athletes where this is very applicable. So if I handle athletes at an international powerlifting competition, I might be dealing with 4 or 5 different athletes over the course of a week. And some of those athletes want to be really calm. They want to just sit quietly. They don't want any fuss. They don't want any hype. They want to just imagine no one else is there, and you have to really adapt to that. Others want you to be really aggressive with them. They want you to really hype them up, slap them on the back. Others want negative self-talk. Others want like positive talk. And so matching that energy from a performance perspective is really important, especially when you're in the heat of a training session, when communication can break down a little bit, and literally the one sentence at the wrong time could distract you from what you're doing, or put you off, or take you out of the zone. It's really important, especially as things get more serious as an athlete. But even if it's not serious, it could be a really beginner athlete, but if they're getting up towards what's heavy for them, they need to be in their they need to be in their zone. They need to be focused. They need concentration. They need you as a coach to be whatever they need you to be, not what you want to be. Or you want to be seen as like the big coach who knows the right things and says all the right cues, even though the cue might mean nothing to your athlete at the time. You just have to be what they need, and that definitely goes for your partner as well.
So a couple more thoughts I've got. We saw a guy once with a t-shirt that said, "I'm sorry for what I said when I was hungry." And I almost feel like it's like, imagine you've got a t-shirt that's, "I'm sorry for what I said when I was tired, or when I was in the gym, or when I was training really hard." And I feel like part of that is being able to kind of go, "I was horrible, I'm sorry," or like, "I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry." But then also kind of leaving it in the gym, because if we just had a heated session and we both annoyed each other, and then we talked like the whole way back, we were falling out about it. Like, I feel like at some point we developed a way of just saying, honestly, it's cool, let's just get on with our day, and that not being a thing anymore.
It's not always going to go well. It just can't. Certainly at the elite level, people are going to miss lifts, people are going to get frustrated, and you're going to fall out with each other, because I know plenty of coaches and athletes who are not emotionally involved, or they're not each other's partners. They are going to fall out with each other. People change coaches all the time. Athletes cry all the time, and it's not because their coach is their partner. It's just because the coach-athlete relationship at a high level is hard. There is going to be contention. There's going to be moments when a coach is pushing an athlete further than the athlete thinks they can go. And sometimes it works great because the athlete does something that they didn't believe they could do. And other times they don't, and they fail. And then it's the coach's fault, and those things break down. So especially as it gets harder, things are not going to work out. And having a kind of, maybe not a safe word, but knowing that what happens in the gym stays in the gym is good, because you don't want something that happened in the gym to just ruin the next few days because you're annoyed at it, because it was an inevitability that you were going to fall out in the gym at some point.
I wonder if the phrase is like training partners, and the idea is like, even if you're not coaching each other, or you're not kind of like that, you think of yourself as training partners. Because like Arnie had a training partner, and it's like, they're not, you don't need to be doing the same sport, you don't need to be doing the same exercises, you definitely don't need to be competing against each other, because we've got friends, John, if you're watching this, Stefan, if you're watching this, they all try and compete against each other, and it's so freaking stupid. And they would be so much better if they just thought of themselves as just training partners who just encouraged each other and didn't think of it as like, oh, I'm stronger than you, or I'm going to do this better than you. But I think if you thought of yourselves as training partners, and I guess we kind of do to an extent beyond the coach-athlete relationship, but then you get to celebrate together. Like, I feel like that's the really fun part, because there is so much that can go wrong in the gym. You can annoy each other, you can get frustrated at each other, but when you get to support each other in competitions or support each other doing PBs or like help each other even like on a very admin side of they need like a certain drink or a certain cue at a certain time when they're competing, then it's almost like you want to take the highs as well as the lows. Because I feel like some of our best like times have been after a competition where we're like, I'll be jazzed because like after bench Euros, for example, super jazzed at getting a podium spot there, but then like it's your success too. And then I felt like very much like that with your CrossFit Open, the last one that you did, Fit as Brit in Africa, and I was like, I feel like I contributed towards that. So then like it was almost we were celebrating together, but that feels like quite an important part of it as well.
Yeah, big time.
The final one I've got, I don't know if you've got others, the kind of practical stuff, is conversation topics in the gym. Because there was definitely something that we've both done it, but there was something specific the other day where we'd just come from like a meeting or something work-wise, going in the gym. I was like just about to set up for a big squat and you were like, hey, this thing at Coach Box, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, do you mind if we just don't talk about that right now? And it's like, there's always going to be, everyone's going to be on a different level with like what they want to talk about, but it's not just with you. I remember having it at competitions before where if I've been assigned a handler for a competition and they decide what they want to talk to me about, then I have to be like, oh yeah, I don't want to chat about this right now. And it's up to me to say, let's not talk about work because that puts me in a different headspace. Like, tell me about you, or like, let's talk about the freaking weather, like anything other than work, because I don't want to do that. But I feel like the conversation topics with your partner are really important there. And we see sometimes they'll be in the gym, there'll be like personal trainers with their clients and they're just chatting and they're not actually getting any work done. And it's because they're going into very deep topics. Whereas if the coach in that relationship of the PT had said, we're not going to go into deep topics because the most important thing for you is that you get your training session done and I'm going to help you with that, everyone would have been better off. But you kind of slipped into it and then one person doesn't want to be rude and then the other person just carries on with it and then they don't know that there's anything wrong. And I think that being intentional about conversation topics is like a big thing that we do now that we maybe didn't always do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I've probably just got two small things to add from a practical perspective. And we've touched on both of them before, but I think one is definitely having a plan before you go into the gym. And especially if you're the coach person, write down that program, because I know I've been guilty of saying, oh, just do this bench bit and then just do some chest accessories, and just trusting you to know how to select the exercise, how to know how many reps and sets on what weight and how much rest. And you're an experienced lifter, so writing a plan for someone can be really, really helpful, but also know what you're going to try and achieve. Don't go into the gym being like, right, I'm going to teach my partner who's never trained before how to do a clean and jerk, and then we're going to teach a muscle up, and then we're going to do this, because there's no way in hell they're going to learn all those things in a short period of time unless you're really there. You're a really damn good coach. Manage in the session, right? We're going to spend 15 minutes trying to learn this thing, and then here's the rest of your workout, so they don't feel like a lemon for making a bit of progress and then not knowing what to do. We
do see that quite a lot, actually, and I'm thinking the gym in Birmingham especially, the guy is a powerlifter who wants to bring his girlfriend, but he doesn't know what to do with her.
Yes.
And he does end up, there are many women walking around like lemons in that exact gym.
Well, they just go on the exercise bike to kill like half an hour of time doing some crunches or something.
But what is that like? I feel like a better thing would just be for them to say like, yeah, come and join me at the gym, but we should get you a session with a personal trainer first, because I don't know. But that's ego again, isn't it? It involves the person who knows how to lift or knows how to train saying, I actually don't know how to coach, or like, I don't know how to coach you in the best way.
Or I don't have time while I want to do the rest of my session to do it.
Maybe getting external help, even together. Like we've seen personal trainers train couples before, and that's been really good. So it might just be that how to train together best is have like treat the whole thing as a shared experience.
Yeah, or you just have to be a bit more prepared, and it's not as easy as, oh, come and train and I'll teach you how to do this. Like appreciate that, but you want to train for 2 hours and your partner might not want to train for 2 hours, and they don't know what they're doing if you're not coaching them. So I think being a bit mindful and just planning a little bit ahead is useful. So I think planning, communication is big. And then the final point is being explicitly clear what you do and don't want. And we've mentioned it, but like if you're doing a lift that you know how to do, you're like, I don't need you to cue me on this, this, and this, but what I do want you to cue me on is this. And when I was doing the CrossFit Open, I was like, I don't need to know this and this at this point, but here, and I'll like write on the piece of paper, this, I want you to tell me where I was the first time I did it, so I know where this is. And as Jodie said, I'll write the cues down, breathe or elbows out or something. And being explicit what you do and you don't want makes it so much easier from the coach perspective. So they're not just shouting things that might be irrelevant or even like mildly annoying for whatever reason. So much of this does come down to basically planning and communication, I think, but it can be so good if it works out really well.
I also feel like the underlying assumption, which is probably my biggest takeaway just from all of this, I think how to best train with your partner is like support them and tell them how to support you.
Yep.
But part of that is like assume that they know, even if they don't know, if someone doesn't know how to squat, they know some stuff, they can still feel their body, they can feel what it feels like to have weight through their legs, for example, they can feel what it feels like when it's symmetrical. So if all we focused on, if you never coached me anything technical, if you just said, come on, you've got this, you know how to do it, I think that would be really good. And it's the same with you, because sometimes I don't know how to coach you to get better at like muscle-ups or handstand walking or pretend pull-ups or whatever. So then I have to be like, come on, you've got this, or remember what you've been taught, or like, you know it. And then it does create the self-sufficiency. You can't really create resentment from that.
No, well, even the guy yesterday was doing some cleans. I asked him what he was doing, so I knew he was doing a triple, and I don't know how good he is, but I was going like, let's go,
You've got this.
Yeah, you got it. Like, come on, get up. Get up is normally good. You're trying to usually get the weight up, or you're trying to get yourself up. And it's just that encouragement. And he said afterwards, I just knowing you were watching gave me the pressure, because there was in that last clean, as he was standing up, there was a moment where he kind of went and if you're not 100%, I'm going to get this up. It could have gone forward. And he was like, just that having that extra pressure meant, I got up with it. And so it's amazing. And that's just someone you don't even know. So it definitely makes a difference.
And also on that, this might be my last point, but I'm thinking if the moment that someone fails something as well, I think like give them space. Like I feel like if in doubt, give the other person as much space as possible. I for sure do that with you. After a CrossFit workout, the last thing I'm going to do is approach you. And then if you had failed anything, because no one wants it, like I feel like the moment, if I failed a lift, I don't want to know what I did wrong, because I probably already know. I don't want reassurance at that point. I just don't want anything. It's just like, let's just leave it. Everyone can cool down, and then I can be like, okay, this is what I need to do the next time.
Sometimes it'll be you okay? Just to make sure you've not like injured yourself.
Yeah.
It's like okay, he'll be fine. Because at the end of the last workout, or one of the workouts when I was on the floor, our friend was like, is he okay? Because when in CrossFit, obviously, after a hard workout, like everyone is dying. It's so normal to see people push really hard and they appear to be dying on the floor. And Jodie's like, yeah, he's fine. Just give him a few minutes.
Fine. He'll tell you if he's dead.
In general, space. If space is good, because not only is the athlete themselves like disappointed, frustrated, tired, whatever it is, but any frustration you have about why that didn't work out so well, you're probably also better to get a couple of minutes space before saying anything, because you also look at things way more objectively with a bit of space. And I think you're more likely therefore to give a better cue, a better summary of what happened.
Yeah.
Are we done?
I think so. So I hope you've enjoyed that. So this is for you if you are thinking about training with your partner, thinking about coaching your partner, or maybe you think you could never train with your partner and you just wanted to listen to find out if it's even possible, or maybe you already do it and you have faced those frustrating moments where you just can't seem to see eye to eye and you just feel like there's a way of improving it. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. Definitely drop us a comment on specific things that you maybe picked up or thought about in a different way. Let us know if you disagree with anything as well, because we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it'd be cool to know if you and your partner have like very different kind of hobbies or sports and trying to get them to merge together, or how you would get around the kind of logistics of training or supporting each other. That would be really interesting to know and like find out about.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
let us know your sports for sure.
Yeah. And we'll catch you in the next one.
That was the third in the series of Chats with Ben, where we covered how to work out with your partner without falling out. Really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, give it a like, definitely add a comment, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel because more videos just like this are coming out all the time. So I will see you in the next one.